It's interesting. We talk about it Intuit and in the companies that I've had the chance to work with, that today leaders are less known for the answers they have, but by the questions they ask.
Yes.
In a lean startup environment, what are the most important questions that a leader should ask a team?
I think number one question is simply, how do we know that we're making progress? It is the biggest death trap that I see new project teams fall into. It's the illusion of progress. I call it achieving failure, where you're successfully executing the plan. You're doing everything you said you were going to do, but it's actually not a very good plan in the first place. And it's so at odds with our senses of what productivity meant in the earlier kinds of work. When I was a programmer trained as an engineer, if I had a good day is a day I spent all day coding. So if I generated, deliverables, if I did what I said I was going to do, that's a good day. But if we're building something that nobody wants, why are we so proud of having done it on time and on budget? That's something to be proud of. That's actually driving the car off a cliff faster. Right. So the way we know we're making progress is through all the lean startup techniques, things like validated learning. Well, that requires every employee in a lean startup team to have, basically on their business card, it should just say entrepreneur. Your job is to do whatever it takes to figure out if we're on the path to a sustainable business. And oftentimes, that's going to mean going way out of your comfort zone. So, a good day might be a day you spend talking to customers, even if you're an engineer and no coding gets written at all. That's a really different kind of sense of productivity than before. And that entire way of thinking is only made possible if the leader is willing to hold the team accountable to that kind of progress. So if you're willing to ask that question, how do we know for sure that we're making progress today? It unlocks a whole new kind of creativity.
You just touched on something that's pretty important, to get outside of your comfort zone. So if you think about it and you're talking to a leader, what would be the single most important piece of advice you would give a leader as they try to transition to lead more in a lean startup environment?
So many to choose from. It's hard to pick just one. I mean, it's so difficult. We've so been trained to put our best foot forward, to be perfectionistic, and I really think that's the thing that we're really trying to get leaders away from. To say it's okay to fail if it was a productive failure, and therefore the way to think about planning is not about planning to avoid failure, but rather planning to mitigate the costs of failure. So the classic mistake leaders make, I see this in venture-backed companies and in big companies exactly the same, is, I have a date where I'm going to be done with product development and I schedule my big launch for that same day. So the same day that customers see the product for the first time is also the day that the press finds out about it and the press releases go out. We make a bunch of noise and we want to get big fast. And the problem, it's like, you don't get a second chance to do that. And if you've made an error, if the product's not as good as you were promising, you actually create a huge problem for yourself. You make the failure really embarrassing. Well, my point of view is before you can have 1 million customers, you got to have 100. And before you can have 100, you got to have 10. So let's launch the product just to those first 10 customers and measure how they respond and then figure out what works and what doesn't. But that requires being willing to have customers see and respond to a product that is not perfect. That's, maybe a little bit embarrassing, that maybe they're going to hate. And, do you really have the courage to say, yes, I can withstand getting that negative feedback and still stay true to my vision and commit to keep iterating and keep my team moving in that direction, even as we get, what could be some pretty embarrassing feedback?
It's interesting. I had one of the best pieces of advice I got was exactly what you described. The person told me that experience is the most difficult and the best teacher because it gives the exam first and the lesson second. And at the end of the day, what you just described was the notion that in a lean startup, you have to be willing to get that experience, to make those mistakes, to have failures, to quickly iterate and to learn.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful process, but it is definitely counterintuitive if you're used to leading in a way that used to be have the answers, put together a plan, and execute.
Yep. Exactly right. I mean, if you think about an established business, that's been operating for many years, that has products in the market, knows their customer, knows what the customers want, it was really possible, and it's still possible in some parts of today's business world, to make really good plans and forecasts. You can say, look, we know exactly how customers behave, we know the seasonal patterns, we know exactly who our competitors are, we know exactly what our market share is, and we can analytically figure out what to do next, and we can do it. And that kind of work, that kind of system works fine for it. It's just we have to recognize how different the context of entrepreneurship and innovation is from that stable, planning-oriented way of working. If you don't have that long and stable operating history, how could you possibly make an accurate forecast? And if you can't make an accurate forecast, how do you hold a manager accountable to being ahead of plan if everyone knows that the plan makes no sense?
Right.
It really requires just blowing up that whole management toolkit, not to be replaced by chaos, but rather by a new management paradigm that is geared specifically to that level of uncertainty.
That's exciting, but that definitely takes leaders outside of their comfort zone.
No
doesn't
kidding.
It?